They called him a genius, but when his patients started disappearing, genius turned into something far darker. The city hospital still smells the same. Bleach, coffee, and something colder, like the ghosts of lives that passed through those hallways. The nurses used to say Dr. Elias Warren never slept, that he'd spend nights standing under the flickering lights of the trauma bay, saving strangers like he was chasing some invisible debt. And maybe he was, because when he disappeared, everyone thought it was exhaustion, but no one knew how deep that darkness went. Dr. Warren was the kind of man people trusted instantly. Calm voice, steady hands, sharp mind. He had the kind of presence that could quiet a room. Even when chaos surrounded him, blood, alarms, screams, he'd move like a man conducting an orchestra. In just 5 years, he became one of the top trauma surgeons in the state. But behind the white coat, there was something off, something hollow. It started with whispers. A nurse said she saw him in the morgue at 3 a.m. when he wasn't on call. Another claimed she caught him re-entering a patient's file weeks after they'd died. Little things that didn't make sense until the day his last surgery went wrong. The patient was a 19-year-old girl named Amelia Hart, a car crash victim. She'd been brought in with massive internal bleeding. Dr. Warren worked for 7 hours trying to save her. He refused to let anyone else touch the scalpel. When she flatlined, he didn't speak. He just stood there staring at her body like something inside him had finally cracked. 3 days later, he was gone. His apartment looked untouched. Clothes folded, mail unopened, everything in its place, except his medical ID badge, which lay on the counter beside a half-drunk cup of coffee. Police found his car 20 miles outside the city on the edge of Hollow Creek. Inside were surgical gloves, blood-soaked bandages, and a photo of Amelia Hart. The blood wasn't hers. At first, the department thought suicide. Maybe guilt had caught up to him. But when the coroner tested the blood, it didn't match Dr. Warren either. That's when everything shifted from tragic to terrifying. Detective Carla Mendez was the first to take the case seriously. She'd been with missing persons for over a decade, seen people vanish in every way imaginable. But this one felt different. Doctors don't just disappear, she said. They leave traces, records, footprints. Something she started digging into his old surgeries. Over 10 years, Dr. Warren had performed more than 700 procedures. At least 14 of those patients had mysteriously died on the operating table despite stable vitals. No pattern, no red flags. Until Mendez noticed something chilling. Each of those 14 patients was an organ donor, and every one of their harvested organs had been redirected to another hospital. The paperwork was flawless. Forged signatures, fake authorizations, everything buried under legitimate files. Whoever did it knew the system inside out. Then came the real twist. One of the recipients listed on the forms was a woman who didn't exist. Amelia Hart. Detective Mendez visited Amelia's parents, desperate for answers. Her mother swore they'd never authorized organ donation. Her father broke down mid-sentence, saying he'd always felt something was off after the crash, that the hospital had pressured them to sign forms in their grief. But there was no record of those forms, no official signature, nothing. When Mendez pulled up the hospital's surveillance archives, she found something impossible. In the footage from that night, Dr. Warren is seen walking into operating room 3 with Amelia. The timestamp shows 2:12 a.m. The surgery ends at 9:46. The tape cuts for 2 minutes, then he walks out, wearing a clean coat. No trace of blood, no sign of distress, just calm. And in the reflection of the door behind him, a second figure moves, wearing the same uniform. The hospital claimed it was a glitch, but Mendez didn't buy it. A week later, a fisherman at Hollow Creek found a duffel bag lodged in the mud. Inside were medical tools, sterilized, wrapped, and sealed, along with a vial labeled EH specimen. DNA tests confirmed it was a sample from Elias Warren himself. But the sample was altered. The structure didn't match normal human blood. It was like someone had been experimenting on it. Word spread fast. The hospital went into lockdown. Old patients began filing lawsuits. Reporters swarmed the building, and somewhere in all that noise, someone broke into the hospital archives and erased Warren's entire personnel file. His records, photos, even payroll entries, gone, as if he'd never worked there. Detective Mendez received one final clue. An email sent from an encrypted address, time-stamped exactly 1 month after his disappearance. It contained a single sentence. The body heals itself if you give it the right parts. Attached was a photo, blurry, grainy, showing what looked like a surgical room lit by a single bulb. On the table, a human form stitched together with multiple donor tags still attached. The police traced the email to an abandoned facility near the outskirts of town. An old medical research center shut down years ago. Inside, they found makeshift operating tables, dozens of organ coolers, and walls lined with anatomical sketches in Warren's handwriting. Some were designs for transplants that didn't make sense. Lungs connected to artificial veins, hearts wired to external circuits, eyes labeled as receptive nodes. And on the far wall, one photo stood out. Amelia Hart, her face circled in red with a note beneath. Version 2, closer to perfect. Mendez knew then that this wasn't a story about guilt. It was about obsession. Warren hadn't run from his failures. He was trying to fix them, to rebuild what he'd lost, piece by piece, from the bodies of others. The deeper she went, the stranger it got. Autopsy reports from other hospitals showed similar surgical patterns, identical incisions, organs removed in the same methodical way. No one ever caught the surgeon behind them. They called him the reconstructor. 6 months after the case went cold, a new patient arrived at a private clinic 3 states away. A young woman found unconscious by the roadside. No ID, no memory, just a faint scar down her abdomen. Doctors said she shouldn't have survived. But one of the nurses swore she recognized the pattern of the stitches. Clean, precise, almost artistic. When the nurse checked the girl's blood type, it didn't match any registered human category. And when she ran a test for DNA, the computer flagged 2 different genetic signatures. One belonged to Amelia Hart, the other to Dr. Elias Warren. That night, the nurse quit her job. The girl vanished before sunrise. The police never reopened the case. Officially, Dr. Elias Warren is still listed as missing, but every few months, another report surfaces, someone claiming to see a man in scrubs standing at the edge of Hollow Creek, staring into the water as if waiting for something to return. People say he lost his mind. Others think he found something no one else should have. But maybe the truth is simpler. Maybe he couldn't live with what he'd done, so he tried to create a version of himself that could. And sometimes, when the night is quiet and the air smells like antiseptic and rain, it almost feels like he's still out there, scalpel in hand, chasing the one life he couldn't save, his own.